Hey, you old middle school graduate. You have 1 hour to translate everything. I read the document, presented to me by John, who had a wicked smile on his face. Written in Spanish, it appeared to be a contract. I know it's not easy for someone who didn't graduate from high school, but do it within an hour. There was a sneer in the words that appeared to insult me that I wouldn't be able to do it anyway. And I knew he was thinking about he'd tease me if I couldn't do it. Surrounding employees regarded the conversation with pity or displeasure. It took less than 3 seconds to read a text of this level. I skimmed the document and was stunned by its contents. It was because it provided information about an impossible transaction. I skimmed the document and discovered that such a contract is impossible. What? What exactly do you mean? You couldn't possibly have read it that quickly. He yelled violently at me, and I pointed out the flaws in the document politely. My name is Asher Lee. I was an office worker working for a certain company. Actually, I was assigned to work at the corporate headquarters. I grew up in a disadvantaged home and was given the opportunity to work at this company's site immediately after graduating from junior high school. It was a part-time work at the time, but I was later recruited on full-time. Even though I was not well educated, the folks I worked with were friendly and taught me a lot. I practiced and gained a variety of skills, including not only labor, but also math and languages. I hope that everything I learned would be valuable, not just for work, but also for the growth of this company. With that being said, this company has raised me to be a fine member of society. I was eventually transferred to an overseas branch office. My initial journey into the international company was demanding and challenging, but it was also gratifying, and I was able to establish solid relationships with the locals. I was also requested to return to the headquarters, but I refused since I was more interested in providing instructions in the field. They were disappointed, but I was pleased since they understood my philosophy and allowed me to do what I wanted. The overseas branch got off to a solid start and was able to create a consistent profit as a result of our efforts. I was then able to return to the head office. Although everyone at the branch office missed me when I left, I was certain that they would be able to handle the branch office on their own now that they had grown up so well. I waved to the people who had come to see me off at the airport while carrying several bouquets and gifts. I intend to return to America and work as an employee for a while to familiarize myself with the work at the headquarters. That was my country of birth, which I had been gone from for a long time, and the people at the company were like family to me. As I looked out the window of the plane, I looked at the sky and thought about my return home. I hadn't been to America in a long time, and I was stunned by how beautifully the office building had been transformed. That was where I was going to work starting that day. Looking around the spacious office, Mr. Miller, the manager, briefly introduced me to everyone. The employees looked at me and welcomed me with applause. The faces of the employees had already changed so much that I guess the only one who knew me was Mr. Miller. First, because I knew Mr. Miller, I was sent to the sales department to acquire a sense of the environment and workflow at the corporate headquarters. After that, I was told to work in the suitable position, but some people would definitely shrivel up if they discovered who I was. So, I had been told that I was going to be assigned as an employee who had returned from the branch office. I look forward to working with you from today. As I greeted to everyone, the employees welcomed me with friendly applause. I thought it would be a good place to work. I had no intention there might be somebody with malevolent purpose among the young, ambitious staff. On the first day, I focused on familiarizing myself with the workflow and learning about the clients and contract tasks. At that point, I was introduced to a young man named John White. He was a well-known university graduate and a bright rookie who made a name for himself in the first year with the company. I recognized Mr. Miller's earlier comment on how we may learn from one another, and, "Hello, I'm Asher. I look forward to working with you." After I greeted him and extended my hand, John glanced at it for a second before saying his name in a gruff voice. "I'm John." It was a common practice, but maybe he didn't like shaking hands with others. With this thought in mind, I followed John to work. Looking back, I felt uncomfortable from the beginning. "You said your name was Asher, right? I'm the senior here." "Yes, I understand." As soon as Mr. Miller left, his tone of voice and attitude became more arrogant. However, I decided not to be concerned because from his still young and talented perspective, being a trainer for a middle-aged man from a branch office would be too dull for him. Perhaps it was my fault that I accepted his attitude in that way. For the first week or two, I was able to learn the job by observing John work beside me. He didn't give me any directions, so I figured I was meant to learn by watching. But apparently, that was not the case. "Isn't it disgusting to get paid just to be next to me at your age?" I rolled my eyes when he suddenly said that to me that day. I took notes while watching John operate next to me, and I was familiar with the workflow. I had learned about clients and contract and was exploring for future business opportunities. But he seemed to think I was just being lazy. Before I could inform him it was a mistake, John yelled out to a female employee who was passing by. "Who are you serving that coffee to?" There is a client at Mr. Miller's place, so I'll serve it there." John took the tray of coffee away from the female employee who answered. Without paying any attention to her bewilderment, he said to me, "I'm sure you're just going to sit there as usual today. You should do something like this." I took the tray with caution so that the coffee did not spill. "But wait!" "It's fine. Let's put the guy who hasn't done anything in a week to work." "Then, could you take it to the reception room?" The female employee bowed with a troubled look on her face, but John said, "You don't have to do that. Here, what are you waiting for? Go!" He kicked me out of the room. I was confused, but it was still a job I had been told to do. I'd make the clients wait if I didn't hurry. Sure. I then carried the coffee into the reception area. After that, John's haughty attitude became more and more severe. He was openly looking down on me and insulting me. I wondered what on earth had I done to offend him. I shook my head, not remembering that I had done something that made him despise me. Still, I was now in the position of learning to work under him. I had no choice but to endure. "Hey, old man, go make a copy of this. I'm going to use them for the meeting, so make copies for all the members." I crouched down to pick up the papers that had been strewn carelessly and heard John's toning voice above me. "Jesus Christ. That's why old men like you are useless." With that, he returned to his desk, not even looking at me anymore. An employee who couldn't bear to look at me in that situation tried to help me, but she was intimidated by John's glare. "I'm sorry," she said with an apologetic look on her face. Don't worry about it. It's my job." I told that to a female employee who was concerned about me and picked up the documents. After that, I copied the documents for the amount of persons at the meeting and clipped them together. Then, I took the finished documents to the meeting room. "You are late," I was shouted at the moment I entered. There should have been time for the meeting to start. I distributed the documents to the employees, wondering, "The meeting time has been shifted earlier." A female employee told me in a small voice. Apparently, I was not informed of the meeting time changed. I sat down, feeling like a small mallet stabbed me in the chest. "Why are you sitting there? You have nothing to do with the meeting." John's sharp voice echoed through the meeting room. "If it's something to do with new products, I'd like to know what's going on." I thought it was excessively unreasonable, and when I expressed my displeasure, John frowned openly. "This has nothing to do with an old man like you. I'm telling you to get out." Everyone's eyes focused on me at the sound of his grumpy voice. The irritated and pitying eyes were all focused at me, and I felt a pang in my chest. I decided that I would only cause trouble if I stayed here. "I understand. Excuse me." I said quietly and left the meeting room. I chewed my lower lip in grief and frustration as the door banged shut behind me. I had come back to the head office to work, but they won't let me do anything. Even so, I was in no position to go against John. I was told by Mr. Miller to learn the job from him. I didn't want to fail him. If I couldn't attend the meeting, I would have to read the material and understand it as I studied the details. During the several hours of meetings, I continued to do what I could do in my own way. The new product shown at the conference was decided to be sold to a prominent international corporation. John was at the center of that project. He was running around to various places as if he had forgotten about my existence. Even now, I was left behind, and he told me to handle things in the office. I was going through and processing expense forms and other documentation. There were occasionally some receipts jumbled in that should not be treated as expenses, and I silently divided them into different places. I was going to deal with them later when I got the details. However, it appeared to me that John was being far too arbitrary in this large project. When he returned to the workplace, he delivered directions to the employees, but he was the only one who knew the specifics of the project's present situation. This made it impossible to complete tasks or lay the groundwork while he was absent. The products were meant to be manufactured at the plant, but I was curious if they had double-checked the factory's working state. Looking around, many staff had their hands bound since they didn't know what to do. While I was wondering what I should do, John came back. His face was flushed and filled with delight. He returned in high spirits, walking towards me with a proud expression on his face. "Hey, you old middle school graduate. You have 1 hour to translate everything." I examined the papers he put towards me with a sneaky smirk. It seemed to be a contract. I know it's not easy for someone who didn't graduate from high school, but do it within an hour. I stopped John as he was about to walk away. Wait a minute. This is a contract for a new product, right? Yeah, so what? I spoke to him as he clicked his tongue. I read it quickly, but this type of contract is impossible. What? What do you mean? There's no way you could have read it that quickly. He yelled violently at me, and I pointed out the errors in the document politely. First of all, the amount is wrong. The contract itself was easy enough to read within 3 seconds. I read over the contract first. Not only John, but also other employees looked at me in surprise. The text looks fine, but it's written in euros. Huh? What are you talking about? It can't be. John grabbed the contract from me and looked over it again. He shuddered as he saw the amount of money indicated on the contract. If it were in US dollars, it would be several million dollars, which is an acceptable sum for a contract. But if it were in euros, the figure would be much different. However, the fact that the contract was written in such small, crumpled handwriting that we didn't detect it indicated that the other company was nasty. But it is obvious if you've checked it carefully. To begin with, it indicated that they were looking down on us. But, fortunately, the contract had not been signed yet. It was still manageable. Someone, please call Mr. Miller immediately. What? You don't have the authority to make calls, old man. I took one glance at the screaming John and spun my head, trying to figure out what I needed to do. John, the contract states that a sample of the product will be provided before the contract is signed. Of course, it's a big deal, so it's obvious. Have you told the factory about this? John stopped at my words. The office story had not been relayed to the factory. Well, I'm sure there's enough to go around without telling the factory. We don't know how much surplus there is without first checking with the factory. I immediately called the factory. I told the local workers, who were taken aback by the urgent contact from headquarters, that I wanted to talk with the manufacturing manager right now over the phone. Fortunately, the factory manager, who seemed to be nearby, picked up the phone immediately. I confirmed the current status and the number of samples we could provide. And it was not enough to meet the number of items that the client had offered. I realize I'm asking an impossible request of you. However, I would like you to complete this quantity of products by the delivery date. If you're the one who wants us to do it, Asher, don't worry, I'll take care of it. The factory manager readily agreed. I felt bad for making those on-site employees work overtime for a while. I appreciate it. I sent them my heartfelt thanks. Asher, what the hell happened? When Mr. Miller, the manager, arrived, John cried out, his face going blue. Sir, he took away my contract without my permission. Everyone here knows that it was John who originally brought the contract. He was probably not aware that he was speaking incoherently, but I could tell he was trying to pin his own failure on me. I felt terribly saddened by this. Mr. Miller, there was a flaw in the contract. Here is the translated version. The color of Mr. Miller's face changed as he looked over the documents I had given him. If a deal like this goes through, our company's losses will be immeasurable. The deal has not been officially concluded yet. I will contact the counterparty myself.
What the hell is wrong with you? That's my deal. I'll contact them myself. John, you shut up for a minute.
When John interjected, Mr. Miller told him to stop.
Asher, can you handle this?
Of course. When he asked me with confidence, I nodded enthusiastically in accord. Everyone in the workplace was surprised I instantly contacted the client and began chatting with them in flawless Spanish. But I couldn't care less now. It was a race against the clock. I have an appointment. I'm on my way to speak with them right now.
I'll accompany you.
We dressed up quickly and prepared to go meet the client. Well, in that case, I'll go with you. The manager gave John a harsh glare as he managed to retain his ground.
Do you realize the gravity of what you've done?
Well, I didn't say anything to John, who was speechless. We didn't have time for that. We left the workplace, leaving a weary John behind. As a result, we were able to reach an agreement with our client that was mutually beneficial. They were openly arrogant at first, but as soon as I began speaking in their language, their attitude shifted and they reacted to me in an equal discourse. They had no intention of doing anything nasty initially. They had recognized the contract's shortcomings, and they said they were happy to have a straight shooter in charge. John's Spanish was apparently difficult to comprehend, but it was also self-serving. To begin with, they did business in Spanish, but Spanish was not their native language. It was common in foreign transactions to use Spanish as a common language. That is why we had to choose our pronunciation and words carefully. And John's pronunciation and mannerisms lacked sincerity. So, annoyed by the confluence of these factors, they decided to terrify him a little. They stated that they did not believe he would take such a contract seriously and sought to take it home. Simultaneously, they stated that they would cease doing business with any company that would easily sign such a contract. I apologize for your company's freshman's disrespect, but you were also mistreating him. The executives from the client's company chuckled and bent their heads, saying they were sorry for attempting to put John on trial. I am sure we will have a mutually beneficial business relationship in the future. We shook hands, chatted, and returned to the head office. We returned to the headquarters and went to the office. People still appeared uncomfortable. Then they dashed up to us. We informed them that the contract had been updated to the correct amount and that the samples would be delivered as promised. I then stated that my general manager and I had renegotiated a new deal with them and that we might do good business with them in the future. Employees exhaled a collective sigh of relief and cheered. Amidst all this, a young man stood alone staring at me. It was John.
What's the matter with you? You took credit for my work.
Those around him had chilly eyes as they looked at John, who was shouting at me. John, do you realize how much trouble you've caused to everyone? I asked quietly, and perhaps irritated by my question. He began raving like a spoiled child.
Who cares? It would have worked if we had just done what I told you. I did nothing wrong. What you did was unnecessary. It was not my fault. It was absolutely not my fault.
Everyone reacted indifferently every time he made a fuss, and it seemed my patience had reached its limit. That's enough! My voice echoed through the office. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're an adult, and you can't even accept your own failings. John was stunned in the face of these subtle but profound statements. The employees just stared at me with astonished faces, while the manager chuckled. If you hadn't solely taken the initiative in first place, this could have been avoided.
But the office is full of useless people.
No one was listening to John's words.
What's going on? Why is it like you are right and I'm wrong?
I have a name, Asher. I told him firmly. You never once called me by my name.
You don't deserve to be called by your name.
John's stubbornness recognized his failure until the very end hurt me.
John, Asher is a key figure who founded and supported the overseas branch for 10 years.
That's impossible.
This old guy has only a middle school diploma.
I did not attend high school, but I've been with the company since then. All of the staff, including John, were taken aback by Mr. Miller's and my statements.
His abilities and career are of a higher caliber than yours. I was foolish to expect that he would learn a lot from you.
John grew depressed and looked down after watching Mr. Miller shake his head in disappointment. After that, John was no longer seen in the office. It wasn't like he was fired. The company tried to do so, but I stopped them. He was an arrogant and selfish person, but he was still young. He can start over again. He is now working at the factory as an on-site worker. First and foremost, he needed to become acquainted with the factory floor, the things he handled, and the people who manufactured them. Then, I wanted him to think about what he was supposed to do. Some people said it was a naive measure, but I didn't think so. It would be humiliating for him to work as a field worker, as he was an arrogant guy by nature. I thought that would be the punishment. He'd never be able to do what people he looked down on could. I hope he continues to learn like that. They are the ones who make it possible for us to work. Because I was raised by this company, I didn't want to cut him off from the same place. I hope that he would recover from this failure and we would be able to work together someday. That's what I thought. A few months have passed since then, and business is running smoothly. As for me, I was appointed as the head of the sales department. Mr. Miller is now the executive director of the company. I have a solid relationship with the employees, and I am still creating one with the client with whom we had a contract dispute. Looking back, my life was saved by this company. And now, I am back at the head office, working as a pillar of the company. I have been working with the overseas branches and new product development is in progress. The results of my diligent work have now borne fruit. Nothing could make me happier. I will continue to grow together with this company. I watered the small cactus on my desk and headed for a meeting. When I returned, the cactus had flowered a little flower. Jacob, listen to your father and be a good boy. With that, my mother gently patted my head. Sure, I hope you'll come back. I was 5 years old at the time, and I recall saying this out loud. From that day on, my mother disappeared from our home. Where did Mommy go? My father, David, remained silent for a long time. Finally, at the end of the day, I started to scream and cry. I was crying so hard that my father gently hugged me. I continued to cry as I buried my face in his chest and eventually fell asleep. I asked my father where she was.
She'll be back soon. She's always on her business. She's probably busy with her work.
Dad's explanation changed every time. I'm not sure if it was because there was nothing in the room to remind me of my mother, but I ultimately forgot her face. I did love her so much. But then, I stopped asking my father why my mother was gone. My mother would come back one day. By the time I entered elementary school, that thought had disappeared.
Jacob, I'm thinking of getting married.
My father told me this when I was in 8th grade. Gotcha!
That wasn't what I expected. I thought you would be more surprised.
Not really, because you should be happy too.
Since when did you become so cocky?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's because of who raised me.
What did you just say?
I tried to remove the arm my father had put around my head. But no matter how hard I struggled, his arm was still wrapped around my head. In that case...
Oh, come on, stop it! Don't touch my weak spot!
The moment I brought my hands to his waist, I was freed from the pain in my head. See that? My special move, the hip tickling attack. As soon as I said that, my eyes met his. Then we both started laughing. I loved my father, who treated me like a brother. So, what's she like?
It's someone you know.
What? Who?
Abigail.
What? I was surprised, to say the least. Abigail was my father's elementary school classmate. She married 2 years after graduating from college, but they divorced 7 years later. Now she was back at home, helping out at the bakery her parents owned. I loved the cream buns there since I was a little kid, and I went there once every 3 days. I saw Abigail the day before, and her attitude towards me had not changed. I was surprised when I heard that Abigail was marrying my father. I had never thought that the two of them were good friends. In fact, I thought they were like cats and dogs. They argued every time they saw each other.
You look sulky. Are you in a bad mood today as usual?
Shut up! I'm in a good mood. You're the one who's looking so glum. Just like that. I had no idea that there were romantic feelings between them. I was 14 years old at the time, and I had no idea. But when I heard that my father was remarrying to Abigail, I was surely relieved somewhere in my heart. If it had been a complete stranger, I would not have known how to treat that person. I could treat Abigail normally. He found the ideal person to remarry while keeping me in mind. I honestly thought so. 3 months later, my father and Abigail got married. Abigail wanted me to go with them on their honeymoon. It was our first family trip during the summer vacation. Abigail, you know? That night, when Abigail and I were alone in the room, I timidly asked her, "What's up? You can just call me Abigail like you used to." Abigail had great intuition. She seemed to have guessed everything from my formal manner, so she just said that. At that moment, my fears were quickly put to rest. How did you guess I wasn't sure what to call you? Because it was obvious that you had been thinking about something for quite some time. We've known each other for a long time, so I know what you want to say. Am I that simple? Yeah, you are. You're just like your father. That's the worst possible way to put it. The moment I said that, Abigail and I locked eyes. And then we both laughed.
What's wrong with you guys? Did you two eat something bad?
Dad asked curiously when he came back from the bathroom. It was a year later. They had a baby girl, Lila, and we became a family of 4. What surprised me was the day I met Lila for the first time. I was taken aback to see my father, who never sobbed in public, sobbing in front of everyone.
Oh my God, I'm so happy.
My father kept repeating this over and over as he gently held Lila in his arms. As I watched him, I had mixed feelings. I was honestly happy to have a new family, but I felt a distance between me and the 3 of them. But I had no idea that my father's smile had a deeper meaning than I could have imagined. When I was 25, I decided to marry Ellie, a nurse. When I saw the family registry that I had obtained for the marriage procedure, I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought that there was a great mistake. That's what I thought at first. However, there was no way that a document managed by a government office could be wrong. I consulted Abigail before confirming the fact with my father. Abigail, what does this mean? It's fine. I'm sure anyone would be perplexed if it confronted with such a thing. Abigail was silent after saying that much, as if she was thinking about it. I waited for Abigail's next word with nervousness. Abigail seemed to know the reason for this. Then, "Good." She only said so. Then she looked at me with a determined expression. Jacob, do you know why I divorced? No, I don't. I replied, a little taken aback by Abigail's question, which I had not imagined. Actually, I couldn't have children after I got married, so I went to the hospital for a checkup. I also discovered that I have a constitution that makes having a baby difficult. It's not like there's a 0 chance of having a baby. With that, Abigail told me the reason for her divorce. After hearing the test results, her ex-husband's mother began to insist that they divorce. At first, her ex-husband was very protective of Abigail. However, as time went by, Abigail felt that her ex-husband's feeling for her was slowly slipping away. It was also hard for her to see her ex-husband torn between her mother and herself. So Abigail asked him for a divorce. Her ex-husband looked surprised for a moment. But Abigail did not miss something. That her ex-husband looked somewhat relieved. Abigail felt from the bottom of her heart that it was a good thing that she had begun the divorce after seeing that expression. After hearing all that, I couldn't help but mutter to myself, "But Lila..." That's right. The doctor said it was a miracle. So when I found out that the baby had come to us, I was so happy. I recalled my father holding Lila lovingly in his arms. At the time, I felt he was really excited about the birth of their first kid together. However, I learned after 10 years that there was a deeper meaning behind it. As I was recalling how my father was at the time, Abigail said, "In fact, David asked me to do him a favor. He said that when the time came, he wanted me to tell you the truth. He said he's a bad communicator and didn't think he'd be able to explain it well to you." With a serious expression on Abigail, I silently shook my head. The wall clock told me it was 1 o'clock. It had been about 30 minutes since Abigail had started talking to me. Halfway through the story, I burst into tears and couldn't stop. In the family register, it was written that my father and I were brothers. I was his younger brother, born when he was 21. Our real parents had passed away in a car accident when I was 1 year old. He felt sorry for me, his brother, who had lost his parents when he was just a year old. "I'm your dad." So he started saying that, and before he knew it, I started calling him Dad too. The sound of it made him happy. And after that, he felt that he couldn't imagine me referring to him as a brother. After much deliberation, he decided to raise me as his son. He told Abigail about it. "I think David himself wasn't sure if he had made the right decision. I think that's why he wanted me to encourage him." Abigail told me how my father felt at that time. Why did he choose to raise me as his son? He figured that it was better to raise me rather than have me without parents. And he thought it would be safer for me to think of myself as having at least a father instead of having no one. How could a man in his 20s raise a child with no parenting experience? How will I respond when Jacob asks me about his mother? The day will come when Jacob will know the truth. What will he think then? Will it really be for Jacob's good to continue to raise him with lies? First and foremost, when Jacob sees the family record, he would be aware of our relationship, so there is no need to conceal it. Various thoughts crossed my father's mind, but then he saw the smile on my face as I said, "Dad." And he recognized that pretending to be my father wasn't a problem. Abigail asked him all the questions she could think of, but he replied, "I'll think about it when the time comes." And he didn't say anything else. "Shouldn't you leave Jacob with someone who will probably raise him?" Abigail suggested. But both of our parents have died, and I am concerned about leaving him with our relatives, he explained to her. Besides, he is my only family. Even if he is not my son, he is my brother, and he is blood related to me. I can't leave him. My parents in heaven would be devastated if we were separated. That's what my father told her. But you may get married in the future. What will you do then? Abigail asked my father. So it doesn't matter if he is my brother or my son. It makes no difference because we are a family. Are you sure that's what you want? When I was going through a hard time after my parents' sudden death, Jacob's smile saved my life. That's why I made up my mind. I'll protect Jacob no matter what. Abigail realized her father's resolve was firm, so she stopped asking him questions. "I understand. I'll support you." She said it with her whole heart. "Then who was that person I saw off at the entrance when I was a kid?" After hearing Abigail's explanation, I couldn't help but mutter to myself, "I think it was the girlfriend David was dating back then." Abigail's response appeared to resolve a nagging issue in the back of my mind. That question was at that time, "Be a good boy," when she patted my head. "I hope you'll come back." I said that to her. I probably thought that the woman who came to visit me occasionally was my mother, and I suppose she accepted when I addressed her as Mom. "She was going out with David with the intention of marrying him, but her parents were very opposed to the idea of suddenly having to raise a small child, so she gave up on the idea of marrying him." Abigail must have heard this from my father. That was what Abigail told me. "In the end, you were still my father to me, and you will always be my father." The day Abigail told me about my relationship with my father, we had dinner. I said this to him as we sat across from each other. He looked surprised, but then he blushed. The next moment, he turned away from me to hide his crying face. I continued, not caring about him. "Me and Ellie want to be a couple like you too, so we hope to continue getting along nicely." When I said this, Dad turned around and said playfully. The tears had receded, but his eyes were bright red.
"You know, becoming a husband and wife like us is a long road."
"What are you talking about? Our relationship is maintained well thanks to me." That's what the usual Abigail would have said. But at that time, she was different. "We have such a wonderful family, thanks to you, David." It was probably a word that my father had never expected to hear. He looked at Abigail with a surprised expression.
"I had no idea you felt that way about me. I wish you were always that forthright."
"Oh, I always try to be honest. Isn't it because you have prejudiced eyes against me?" The next thing I knew, their eyes met and they both started laughing. As I watched them do this, I thanked my father, Abigail, and Lila from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to be a member of their family. And I truly believe that I wanted to create such a great family with Ellie.
My husband and I met through a friend and somehow hit it off from the first time we met and naturally started dating. After living together for 2 years, we got married. A year later, our beloved daughter Emily was born. Living in such a family of 3, we were living an ordinary but very happy life. "Wow, the lead character? That's great, Emily." She got the leading role in her first-year elementary school fall recital. As soon as she came home from school, she happily told me, "There will be lots of dancing scenes, so everyone told me that I'm a good dancer and would be perfect for the role." Emily had loved to sing and dance since she was 3 years old and had been attending dance classes in the neighborhood. She had a very cheerful and outgoing personality and was so energetic that she never took a break from her dance class. "You're always practicing a lot, aren't you? You got to tell Daddy when he comes home from work." "Yes, I will," Emily said with a smile. When Emily told her father about the news, he was as overjoyed as I was. From then until the recital day, she practiced her lines for about an hour right after coming back from school, and then went to dance class. It was such a hard schedule that even an adult would get tired, but Emily seemed to enjoy it very much. Before I was married, I used to go to the gym after work and then go out to dinner with friends. I used to schedule too many things, so I thought she was like me. As a parent, I was worried about her, but in general, children are energetic. I was very happy to see Emily smiling and enjoying what she was doing. On the day of the presentation, thanks to all the practice, Emily was able to dance and deliver her long lines perfectly without any mistakes. My husband and I were so busy trying to capture it for our own eyes and cameras that we didn't even have time to blink. When we got home, we were giving her parental praise, and Emily was telling me how she felt about the recital. It was already time for dinner. We didn't have much time, but I wanted to make dinner for Emily, who had practiced hard every single day. I made a meatloaf and mashed potato with gravy sauce, her favorite dishes, and so our happy days went on as usual. But one day, when I woke up Emily to go to school, she told me she was not feeling well. It was unusual for Emily to say such a thing. She had rarely been sick, so I gave her the day off from school. However, the next day, and the day after that, her condition did not change at all, so we decided to take her to the hospital. She didn't have a cough or runny nose, but a tremendous feeling of lethargy was overtaking her body. I had expected to find out the result after a simple medical examination, but that was not the case. After repeated tests, the doctor told us she had pediatric cancer. The doctor told us this in a different room from Emily. She was sleeping on an infusion. We could not accept the reality. "Oh no, why Emily? It can't be, it can't be. She was so healthy until recently. She even danced at her recital, you know." I knew that there was nothing I could do or say about it, but I couldn't think straight, so I said something like that strongly back to the doctor. The doctor sat there silently, as if he couldn't say anything. That kind of response made me realize that Emily has a really serious illness. Just as I began to cry, "But she will get better, right?" my husband asked the doctor. The doctor looked at us bitterly. "Cancer at a young age is characterized by rapid progression, so I can't say at this point that it is absolutely curable. However, there have been some cases of complete cures. I know it must be very difficult for the parents. I hope that you face your daughter with a positive attitude. Of course, we will do our best too," the doctor said to me firmly, choosing his words carefully. We left the room, wiped away our tears, and went to the hospital room where Emily was sleeping. In the hospital room, Emily was still sleeping. A large IV tube was connected to her cute little hand. It was so painful to see her like that, and the tears began to well up again from my eyes. My husband rubbed my sobbing back and patted Emily's head with his other hand. "We must not give up our hope. We must believe in Emily and support her." My husband's voice was trembling, so he must have felt the same way as I did, but I knew he was right. "It's hard for us, but Emily, such a small body, is so sick, so deprived of freedom, and is in pain. It's much harder for Emily. As parents, we decided to support Emily as much as we could. Then, Emily began her stay in the hospital. We did not tell her the name of her illness. Instead, we told her that she had caught a bad cold and would stay in the hospital until she gets better. The hospital stay must have been very boring for Emily, who was only 6 years old, but she never once complained. "Last night, the nurse told me that I was doing a great job taking the bitter medicine." I went to see Emily every day at the same time, as soon as the morning visiting hours started. Emily happily reported to me every day about her life in the hospital. "Really? That's great, Emily. Didn't you hate the bitter taste?" I asked her. Yes, I do. But if I take the medicine without complaining, I can get well soon, so I'm doing my best. Emily was much stronger than I thought. When her hair fell out due to the side effects of anti-cancer drugs, I looked at her, I knew it, but I was so shocked inside. Emily had beautiful long hair down to almost her chest. She liked to tie her hair in 2 buns. I was her mother, but I didn't know what the right thing to say to her, so I kept silent. Emily said with a smile, "Is it cute like when I was a baby?" She intentionally said positively. When Emily was a baby, her hair grew slower than the other children around, and I was worried about it. I think she remembered that I had told her that before. But later, the nurse told me that Emily had actually cried a lot when she saw her hair fell out. Emily was a really strong girl, but it must have been hard for her. She was just trying to have the strength of mind to keep smiling to make her parents not to worry more. Such a positive attitude toward her battle with the disease helped Emily gradually begin to recover. By the time she was in the 3rd grade, she was discharged from the hospital and was able to go back to elementary school again. Although there were still some restrictions on excessive exercise, she was able to lead a mostly normal life. Emily worked so hard, she was able to overcome her illness. Thinking that, I was really happy to see Emily's daily progress. "I'm home!" Emily, with her school bag on her back, came home from school in high spirits. "I had a gym class today." She told me about the events of the day. Her hair had grown back to its original length, and every morning she asks me to tie her hair in a certain way. We were able to regain those days that we had once almost lost. We were able to overcome the illness. With that in mind, happy days began to flow again as normal. 1 year later in the winter, Emily's birthday was coming up in a week, so we went to pick out a birthday present. Emily and I went shopping to the city. Emily saw a big screen attached to a building, and she said, "When I grow up, I want to dance in front of many people like that." The group of girl dancers were on the screen. "You're good at it, Emily, so I'm sure you will be." As I said that, "Yes, I'm sure I can do it." Emily smiled. On that day, Emily chose a pair of pink shoes for dancing as her birthday present. We got in the car, Emily happily holding her present in the passenger seat. "Hey, Mom." What is it, Emily?" I answered, looking ahead since I was driving. "If, I die." It was the first time I had heard such words from Emily's mouth. "What are you talking about? Don't scare me like that. Her illness is cured, so it couldn't be happening." My wish for such a thing became my willpower, and I said so in a slightly strong tone. "Then put these shoes on my grave." I can't promise such an unlucky thing. "Why do you say that? Are you feeling sick again?" I stopped the car, looked at Emily's face, and asked. "No, I'm fine. Just what if, nah." Emily said so cheerfully. What if, okay, I replied. But not even a week later, the day before Emily's 10th birthday, I received a phone call from the school. Emily had fallen ill. I immediately called my husband and rushed to the hospital, where doctors and nurses were gathered in the hospital room. They told us that the cancer had returned, and she was in a very critical condition. Moreover, it had worsened to the point where Emily must have been feeling pain. They said that Emily had probably kept it quiet. She went to school in the morning in good spirits, but she wasn't really feeling good. I'm her mother, so why didn't I notice that? Emily! I called out to her name, crying. Her eyes were closed. My husband could not hold back his tears either. He hugged Emily and cried. Emily woke up, and one glistening tear on her cheek. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I just wanted to be with you as long as I can," she said in a small voice, as if she heard what we were talking with the doctor. All I could do was shake my head. "There's nothing to apologize for. I'm sorry too, Emily, that I couldn't notice you were suffering. I know it's hard. I know it hurts. I don't know how many times I have felt that way, even though I never said it out loud. If I can, I want to swap with you. My husband feels the same way, and he knows that our daughter is in pain. I feel so frustrated and disappointed at my inability to do anything about it." "I don't want to," Emily also said in a small voice. "I'm sorry. It's so much pain and suffering, and she's only 9 years old. Of course she doesn't want to. I hate it too. I don't want to think about Emily being gone. I can't accept it." But Emily said to me and my husband, "I don't want Mom and Dad to be in so much pain. That's why I'm glad it's me taking this." Emily said such things under her breath, even up to this moment. "Emily." My husband and I called out her name, our faces messed up with tears. How could such a kind-hearted child, such a small child, have to suffer so much? Why Emily? How could such a small body defeat a disease that could kill an adult? There is no God. If there was, he would not have let Emily suffer like this. "Emily, Emily." But if there is God, please, I'll do anything. I'll give anything. Please save Emily. I'll put up with any amount of pain if I have to go through it. I wish so many times in my heart. "Mom, Dad, I love you," Emily said in a voice that sounded like it was about to disappear. "We love you too, Emily." Hearing those words from my husband and me, Emily passed away at the age of only 9. My husband and I couldn't accept the reality that Emily was gone, crying all the time. We had a funeral, but I barely remember it. However, I was very glad to see many of Emily's friends came to the funeral. I could feel how much everyone loved Emily. After the funeral, my husband pushed himself to go to work. He was working hard, so I should do something too. So I looked around the room for the first time in a while. I saw Emily's present box, which she would open on her birthday, sitting in the cupboard. Then I suddenly remembered that she had said she wanted me to put it on her grave. I was about to open the box. I noticed a piece of paper tucked into the ribbon that wrapped over the box. Thinking it must be a receipt, I looked, but it was something unexpected. "Dear Mom and Dad, I hate if I can't tell you how I feel, so I wrote you a letter. Mom, thank you for coming to see me at the hospital every day. Thank you for being so kind to me. Dad, thank you for always working hard for us. Thank you for carrying me on your back. I'm very happy to be your daughter. Maybe I will die, but I heard that if I am a good girl and I do my best, I can be reborn. Then I will definitely come to see you both. Please wait for me, so I won't be lonely. Keep smiling. Thank you. I love you. From Emily." When I read this, I could not help but shed tears. I wonder what Emily was thinking when she wrote this letter. I wonder if she even knew that my husband and I would be crying and depressed all the time. She was a kind and strong child no matter what happened. Keep smiling. I can't smile right away, but if Emily wishes me to, I will do so as much as I can. I showed this letter to my husband when he returned home, and we both decided to look forward together. A few years has passed. We were able to have a new life, and I gave birth to a baby girl, Emily's younger sister. Her name is Hélène. Because of what had happened to Emily, we were more concerned about Ellen's health than anyone else. When Ellen reached the age of 6, which Emily diagnosed as pediatric cancer, we could not shake off our anxiety and had her checked at the hospital. There were no abnormalities, and she is healthy and will turn 7 years old this month. My husband and I were relieved from the bottom of our hearts. Then, on my husband's day off from work, the 3 of us went to town to buy a birthday present. "I want this." After looking at all kinds of toys and not being able to decide what she wanted, Ellen found a pair of familiar pink sneakers. My husband and I looked at each other. They looked just like the one Emily had chosen as her last birthday present. Then Ellen said something even more surprising. "I want to dance wearing these." I had never heard Ellen say she wanted to dance before, but surely, just like Emily, I had seen Ellen many times imitating people dancing on TV and having fun. "I see. Shall we buy these?" "Yay!" After we bought the shoes, while we were walking, "Ellen, since when do you like to dance?" my husband asked to Ellen. Then, "Since a long time ago. I wanted to dance in front of many people," she said with a smile. When I heard that, "What do you mean for a long time?" I asked her. And she answered, "When I was with you guys before." We were surprised at Ellen's words. Believe it or not, Ellen really said that. For a moment, my husband and I froze in place and looked at each other. In the next instant, I couldn't stop the tears. "Mom, what's wrong? Does it hurt somewhere?" "No, it's nothing. Just I'm so happy that before, and even now, Ellen is with us." "Me too." I wonder if Emily came back to us as Ellen. We haven't told Ellen about it yet, but we still feel that way. Emily, Ellen, because of you, we can keep smiling. You will always and forever be our precious daughters.
It was a lovely spring evening, with flowers glistening slightly white in the light of the street lamps. A woman seated next to me at a new employee welcome party asked me a question. "What type of woman do you like, Leo?" Her name was Nora Gracia. She was a 22-year-old new employee. She was pretty lovely, with her hair in the forelock, making her appear older than her age. "My name is Leo Anderson. I am 45 years old, single, and an ordinary employee. With an unattractive face and a small, overweight body with a sagging tummy, I am far from appealing. Recently, my hair has been thinning. My biggest concern is my short stature. There were no women in the company who would talk to me. So when a young, cute girl in her 20s asked what kind of girl I loved, I was surprised but sore to answer her question. Someone bright and kind. Young girls are energetic, aren't they? When I said this nervously, she smiled and said, Are you okay with someone extremely younger than you? I became interested in her during this talk. We were on the same train on the way home from the welcome celebration, so we traveled together and talked about a variety of topics. She told me that she preferred older men. Listening to her, I could tell she was a mature person with a very solid mindset. There was not the slightest hint of the lightness characteristic of young people. Perhaps, because of her personality, men of her generation were untrustworthy and inadequate for her. She said that most of her friends were also older than her. She and I became good friends after that, and we often talked at work, and I taught her what she didn't grasp.
In this document, it's easy to understand if you include a graph. If you click here, you can make a graph in just a few minutes.
Okay, I got it. I'll try it. Oh, are you thirsty after all that explaining? I'm gonna make some tea. She always treated me with a smile. Her smile was so charming that I grew to like her more and more. One day, I boldly asked her out to dinner. I was nervous about what would happen if she refused, but she readily agreed. I didn't go to a fancy restaurant that day so that she wouldn't have to worry too much. I chose a stylish bar. I had a beer and she had a lemon sour. Despite our age difference, we got along great when we talked. We both liked the same movies, so we had a lot to talk about, and the time flew by. She seemed to be smiling and having fun the whole time. On the way home, as we walked to the station, she said to me, will you go out with me?
Excuse me?
I couldn't believe what I heard. How could I, a simple, ordinary, and nondescript guy, be asked out by a woman? And by such a young and cute woman. It didn't seem real. It was like a dream. Of course, I said yes without thinking. I'm not dreaming, am I? I slipped my hand behind my back so she couldn't see it and pinched the skin on the back of my left hand with my right hand. The moment I felt pain, I knew it was real. I was certain of that. I had never been popular with women before, and she was my first girlfriend. I wanted what she liked about me, such an unattractive-looking guy. She told me that she fell in love with my kind and hard-working personality, as well as the fact that I was enjoyable to be around. Every day after that felt as brilliant and dazzling as though I were in heaven. Even though life was difficult, I knew that if I worked hard and lived diligently, something like this will happen one day. That was what I thought from the bottom of my heart. Eventually, the people at work found out that we were dating, and they were very surprised. People called us Beauty and the Beast and laughed at us behind our backs for being such a mismatched couple. But I didn't care. The guys who had a crush on Nora were envious of me. Our relationship went well, and a year later, I proposed to her.
Look, I'm aware that I'm like this, but I want to marry you.
Sure, I'd be happy to. She was overjoyed with tears. On my next day off, I took her to my parents' place to introduce her to them. I can't believe that such a cute young lady is going to marry my son. I'm so grateful. It brings tears to my eyes. Don't you agree, darling?
Yeah, you are right. Thank you, Nora. Please support my son from now on.
My parents were very happy to welcome her. I was talking with Nora while holding her hand on the way home from my parents' place.
I think I should go to your parents' house now. Maybe I should put on something that helps me look younger.
You look fine the way you are right now. Nora looked at me and smiled. The next day, however, Nora called me out of the blue and said something shocking. Let's break up.
What? What's going on? What happened?
I was surprised and asked her why, and she spoke up weakly. Last night, I called my parents and told them about the marriage. And you know, they opposed it. Her parents, particularly her father, were strongly opposed to the marriage. The reason was the age difference. It was no surprise. I guess it was inevitable. Our ages were 23 years apart. Her parents were said to be younger than me. If I'd been told that my precious only daughter was marrying an unknown man who was older than me, of course I would be worried too. She sobbed, claiming she couldn't marry if her father was against it. So I think we should break up. Because instead of dating someone you can't marry, you should date someone else. Oh my God, I can't believe I won't be able to marry Nora. I loved her so much. I couldn't think of anyone else to marry but her. I didn't want to break up with her. I couldn't give up. While comforting her, I told her so. Anyway, I want you to take me to see your father. I want to tell him that my feelings are serious. I'm sure he'll understand if we meet face to face. But my father doesn't want to see you. And he's a very stubborn man. I don't think he would allow me to marry you. I tried desperately to persuade her. Don't give up. Don't you want to be with me too? Of course I do. I want to be with you too. But you know, I can't. I can't disobey what my father says. Nora said, and started crying again. Nora, don't cry. Please let me meet your father. You won't know until I meet him. I'll convince your father, no matter how small the chance is. When I said that, she finally stopped crying. Okay, I got it. She said so. A few days later, on a Sunday, we went to Nora's father's house for lunch. We planned to pay her father a surprise visit during the day when he was at home. We arrived at the house. Nora unlocked the front door and went inside. I followed behind her. She called out to her father in the living room. I'm home. Hey Nora, what's up? You didn't tell me that you were coming. Nora spoke to her father, who turned around in surprise. I brought someone I want you to meet. Following her lead, I entered the living room. My palms were sweaty with nervousness. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. I apologize for suddenly visiting you like this. My name is Leo Anderson, and I am dating Nora. I bowed deeply to her father. Then I raised my head and looked him straight in the face. I was prepared to be punched in the face. Every muscle in my body contracted. But when he saw me, his eyes widened and he looked surprised. Then he asked me in a loud voice, Wait a second, are you Leo? You are Leo, right? He stood in front of me and grabbed me by both shoulders. I stared at his face in surprise. I put my brain in full gear. Then, the memories of my childhood gradually came back to my mind. Then, I saw the scar on his forehead. That's when I recalled his face. Are you David? That's right, Leo. It's been a long time. No way. Have you been? We hugged each other tightly. David was my childhood friend. David used to live in my neighborhood and was often bullied by his classmates in elementary school. I used to help him out. It was the same time when I first met him. David was surrounded by 4 or 5 boys who beat him with sticks and kicked him. I yelled at them to stop, but they ignored me and continued to attack David. I stood between them to protect David, taking most of their blows. I fought back, swinging my fists, but I was no match for them. After they had beaten me until they were satisfied, they stopped attacking me and left. As a result, we both got big scars on our foreheads.
Are you okay? Does it hurt?
I asked David, and he said, "No, I'm fine. Thanks for saving me. But why did you do that for me?" "When you see someone in trouble, you can't leave them alone, right?" I answered. It was a lesson my father had taught me. He used to say,
"If you see someone in trouble, help them."
That's what he always said to me. It was ingrained in me. That day, I took David home and tended to his wounds. Since then, David and I started playing together. I was David's only friend. David grew up in a single-parent household, and his mother was often working and arriving home late. As a result, David spent the most of his time at my place. David often ate dinner at my house. Since David and I both didn't have brothers or sisters, I was happy because I felt as if I had a sibling. We ate homework together and shared snacks. We went to the pool in the summer, spilled watermelons, and watched fireworks in the garden. We grilled potatoes over a fire in the winter and built snowmen when it snowed. I shared many happy memories with David. However, just before I entered junior high school, we had to move to a new place due to my parents' job transfer. When I told David about this, he cried. "Who am I gonna play with when you're gone? I'll miss you."
"You'll be fine. I'm sure you'll make new friends."
I patted David on the shoulder and said so. I promised to write him a letter, and we parted ways. But our communications ended after a few exchanges. David had mentioned in one of his letters a long time ago that he had become friends with a new student who had transferred to his new school. I was sure he was getting along well with his new friends. I was also busy getting used to the new environment. For approximately 10 years, we exchanged Christmas cards, but that gradually ceased. I believe David mentioned getting married in the last Christmas card I received from him.
"I never imagined that Nora's father was you. I don't know what to say." "I was surprised too."
We laughed and clapped each other on the shoulder. Nora looked at us with a surprised look on her face.
"Sit down, let's drink tonight."
With that, David suggested I sit on the chair. Nora and I sat on the row across from David. David's wife brought beer and glasses from the kitchen. We poured beer into each other's glasses, and David proposed a toast.
"Then let us rejoice that Leo and I have been reunited, and let's celebrate Nora and Leo's engagement." "What? David? Will you give me permission for that?" "Of course. I know exactly what kind of person you are. You weren't a good student or athlete, but you had a strong sense of justice and were a sincere and kind person. I can trust you with my daughter, I realize now that age doesn't matter. I'm relieved. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Dad. Nora was also happy with tears in her eyes. That day, David and I drank together and talked about previous times. 6 months later, Nora and I had a wedding ceremony. Of course, both of our parents were there to celebrate. Nora looked so beautiful as a bride. I wasn't sure if I deserved to be with someone so lovely. Before the ceremony started, David said to me, "From today on, you will be my son-in-law." I guess so. Looking forward to it, my father-in-law. When I said that, "Don't refer to me as your father-in-law," David laughed. It's an odd sensation to be reunited with a childhood buddy and also to be connected to him. And I have my beloved wife next to me. I'm so happy. When I muttered to myself, Nora also said with a cheerful smile, "Me too." Then, smiling, she rubbed her stomach. Nora was carrying a new life. I can't wait to meet this baby. I want her to be happy for sure. I agree. The three of us will be happy together. I used to wonder what would happen if they opposed our marriage, but I never imagined it would come to this. David then reflected on the fact that he had been too hard on his daughter. He promised me that when she married, he would give her some space. He expressed relief that he could entrust me with his daughter. Today's sky was so clean and blue that it appeared as if the rain had never fallen until yesterday. It was as if even the sky was celebrating our new beginning.